Perfect. So we'll go ahead and start this meeting. Thank you all for coming this evening. We welcome you here. If you'll all just rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much again for everyone showing up this evening. And I just want to remind you of the format of our meeting. It is an open meeting for you to observe. But if you need, please silence your cell phones, all those things. If you need to go step out to have a conversation, you can step out and do that as we work through our meeting this evening. Our mission and vision. The mission of the Nampa School District is to ensure high levels of achievement for every student. Vision statement. Every student is fully engaged in extraordinary learning experiences, preparing for successful transition to the next stage of life. Nampa Education Association comments.
So Brian sends his regard. They apparently have been in retreat all this weekend. And I was going to quote him, but I think I can't. He basically said, we're tired, but Nampa School District rocks. So that's his report.
Thank you. Trustee comments? We'll start over here, Trustee Ross.
Enjoyed our board norms workshop session was it last week. Other than that, no other exciting items to report on. I look forward to seeing the notes from the session.
And we do have notes and a couple things and probably some questions I'll be sending to you as well from that. So I noticed we have 2 signed up for public comments. Were there any more that came in? Anybody that didn't have a chance to sign in that wanted to speak to something? Okay. So Claudia Frent, is that correct?
She's not here yet.
Oh. Okay, so it is on the next school year. So that'll be down in the new business and hopefully she's here before we get to that item. And then Kristen Young.
Yeah.
Excellent. And yours is on the handbook. Is it like, is there a specific grade level handbook or just all of them in general or?
I mean, we were reading through all of them, but this is specifically talking about some things in the high school handbook.
Okay, so we have the high school handbook pulled out, so we'll move it to that and give you the opportunity to speak before that item on the agenda. Excellent, thank you. So we are to the consent agenda and I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I please pull the middle school handbook from the consent agenda, please, and add it to the same business agenda item for the high school handbook, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that'll be under new business item F, correct? No. The E. I looked.
Chairman Simpson, can we clarify which middle school handbook?
The overall, thank you.
Thank you.
I move we approve the consent agenda with that change.
Second.
Excellent. So it is moved by Trustee Westfall and seconded by Trustee Ross. Any discussion or questions, comments? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. We are on our business items with House Bill 69, which was approved as House Bill 222. Excellent.
So tonight we have Representative Kirby, who serves as our vice chair on the House Education Committee. He said he is entering, or he's been serving for 8 years or his 4th term. So Representative Kirby, thanks for being here tonight. I also would like to recognize Representative Yamamoto, who's in her 1st term in the House. So thank you both for being here.
And Representative Yamamoto is on House Ed with us, and she's been very involved in helping get this bill through, and then with the other bill on the agenda, she's done a lot of work. So really,
Come on in.
trying to decide which way to
Popular
go.
dude.
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of people coming.
Yeah,
Here,
I hear you. Yeah,
That's pretty
yeah.
exciting.
Sorry. All right. Are you gonna read after?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so anyway, so House Bill 69, I think you mentioned, Randy, that, or Chairman Simpson, or how you want to do this. Yeah, so 69, we presented, and then we made a couple little changes, it became 222, and that was when it was signed into law. But the changes we made from 69 to 222 did not have anything to do with the school, what for the school board. That was just kind of between the legislature and the agencies. So this is a pretty long bill. If you had a chance to read it, you'll see it's kind of comprehensive. But we had to put, what we're trying to do is kind of streamline things a little bit and get the focus of the whole state on some of the same things. We want the teachers, I'll go through some parts of the bill, but the teachers and the principals on the same page as the district office, the superintendent, and the same page as the school board. And we also want the legislature and the agencies and the governor, all of us working together. And that has not ever happened. I was a superintendent. I've actually known Allison for a while. I was superintendent for 21 years, and I've been in the legislature now for, this is my 8th year. I'm pretty familiar with, pretty much the last 40 years, and we've never got together, okay, as a state. So this bill was designed to get everyone kind of on this, get some focus on things that actually matter. What do we really care about? Now let's get some data, and let's all talk about the same data, and let's see if we can move the needle. So that's why there are the different parts in there. The first part of 69 is the continuous improvement plans and training, which the school boards have been doing those for a while. They do those continuous improvement plans. You do one every year. And I will just quickly say, I made a large point of not looking at any of your data and at your CI. I wanted this to be global, not anything, my opinion. I don't know anything about it, so I don't want to give you my opinion, just talk about what we're up to. But I'm sure you've been doing continuous improvement plans. And so we made a couple of changes in those. One, all of the improvement plans have to be approved actually approved by the government, school board, actually have a motion and a second to approve it. So that, because as you guys know, that you are supposed to ultimately be responsible. And so we were hoping with that the school board's members would read those, have comment on them, and actually hopefully take an active role in the conversations. Obviously we all try to stay in our lane. Legislature, we're always trying to stay in our lane. We're not trying to be the agency and so forth. But you guys would be very involved in that. And the reason is, as a superintendent, when I began, we were in the lower quartile of the state. And it wasn't until the school board, we started putting academic issues on every agenda and setting goals. The teachers and the administrators and the board were together. We set goals. We put it on the school board agenda. Every month we discussed it, progress. That's when we took off. And so the teachers and the principals need to, and superintendent and the curriculum guys and all of them need to know that you guys care. I mean, no. And more than it's a global way, you're progress monitoring and so forth, really matters. So that's why we put you to approve those. Just because we really want, and I know that goes on in some districts and it may be already going on here, but it's not going on consistently. And then if you look down at the bottom of that first page, we want you to put in trajectory growth targets toward literacy proficiency. So rather than just what is it this year, what's our 5-year, what's our 6-year goal? Where are we going to be a year from now? Okay, we're here. And where we're going to be next year, where we're going to be the following year. And he said, okay, well, how are we going to get there? Got to ask you guys, what's the plan? How are we going to do this? And then here's where Idaho really has done a really poor job. We keep missing all of our goals, and there's not ever a conversation statewide on what we should do. They're just, it's non-existent. We set a goal for 10 years from now, and about after 9 years, we suddenly figure out we're not even going to come close, and so then you have to set a new goal. In my opinion, set a goal, you start looking at each year, and discussing how we're going to get there, and then if you got there, hey, celebrate. I really feel celebration is important. And then, but if you didn't, okay, what do you need to do different? You don't need to inspire a bunch of people. You need to say, okay, what do we need to do different? So that's why we have that in there. Probably the one other thing I'd like to mention here mainly is on page 5, pretty important little section. If you look, I don't know if you guys have, okay, so if you're on page 5, about line 28, measures and targets should be chosen at the school level. Now, these are the measures and targets that teachers use to move over on the career ladder. So they have to say, hey, we're going to get thus and such percentage of kids at thus and such level to move for the school to get, for them to get a raise, so to speak. Okay, so they are chosen at the school level in collaboration with the staff member. And I'm very proud to say that in 2015, that was the sentence I got put in this bill. So I want the staff members involved in the decision. Okay, and the principal, they're the ones in the curriculum people, the reading specialists, they're the ones that actually know what's going on. What's happened the last few years, the demographics, all of our, what's going on there. They should be setting some goals, but what we added in on line 29 and 30, these are approved by the school board. Again, you people need to know what's going on. How are your people moving over on the salary schedule, so to speak? And this is obviously not the salary schedule, but the career ladder, which gives you the money for your salary schedule. Now, the next one is really the critical sentence for you as far as the whole bill goes. That's in 30. Measures and targets must also align with the performance measures and benchmarks in the continuous improvement plans. So hopefully you can see what we're doing there. This is where the teachers and the principals have worked together on those goals for the teachers. What are the kids supposed to learn for that teacher to move over on the career ladder? But if they're writing goals for IRI, there needs to be a connectivity between what the teachers and the principals are doing and what you guys are doing as far as setting goals go. They have to be working together. Otherwise, they're all for doing all that and you're all doing this, and the next year you throw out a new CIP plan, who knows what happened or whatever. This has got to be dynamic conversations. I've talked to some schools that have already started this process, and they said that the conversations with their teacher reps and their principals and their, curriculum, you got all these guys that really know the deal. And the conversation with them and the board is and the superintendent, and because this particular superintendent was a math guy like I was, and so he wasn't a reading guy. So but there was really cool conversations trying to get everyone on the same page. And maybe you're doing that. This agency's told us about 10% of the school districts were doing this. Statewide, we're really aligned. So some already were. Many were partially a little bit here and there, and some not at all. They're just rubber stamping and sending them in every year. So then probably the last main one was we got rid of some bureaucracy. For example, on page 10, there are 4 domains that your teachers get evaluated in. I don't know how, but 22 components roughly. 4, I think there's 4 components in 2 domains and 5 and 2 or something like that. So then you have to get evidence, turn in evidence of all 22 components. Really time-consuming situation. we've had complaints about this since it started. Okay, and so what this bill did is said, okay, we're gonna start really looking hard at how much kids learn. Okay, as far as evaluations, the first 3 years in the residency run, the principals have to evaluate them in all 4 domains. But once they're past that, the district can choose to only use 2 domains if they would like. Cut down by half the amount of time, and what you would hope that a 20-year veteran that's knocking out of the park probably doesn't need 22 evidences. Okay, I would not think that. I would think that'd be just a really poor use of time. And you want your principals to spend their time on dynamic interactions with teachers on really improving where, you want them making the best use of their time. So that's that. We got rid of a couple of reports. Page 11, that continues with the college and career advising. That's in this. We don't need that report because it's in your SIP tool. And rather than send it, what's been happening is everybody sends these to the state and then they get put in a box. And I think an administrative assistant somewhere reads them, but there's no dynamic, it's really not a dynamic interaction back with the schools on why'd you do this and how about doing something different, just in a box. So we would say, okay, just put them in your SIP tools. Okay, and then we'll have conversations and we'll all be able to look at them. And then the last one was page 11, line 32 and 33, the literacy plan. You don't have to submit it to the state board. And again, it was just a bunch of reports in a box, somewhere a file or whatever. So what we'd rather do is let's have some goals and let's see if we meet them. And if we're not meeting them, then let's do something different. If we're meeting them, let's go, yay, we finally met a goal here in Idaho, which we've not done as a state educationally. So anyway, that's kind of pretty much the highlight of the bill. And if you guys, I'd love to hear a comment or a question, or you mad at us for doing it, or happy we did it,
Any questions?
I wasn't mad, it was just different. So I was trying to understand the outcome that you were hoping to see. And I'm just gonna say this, so would you, if you were to see a plan under this new law, you would see a district goal in each of the areas, literacy, career readiness, and then we would see below it a school goal, if it's.
Yeah, you're gonna have, that's in here, that's in the fine print in this bill, that you do put those in, right?
So for all those areas then?
Yeah, it's in there. Those are on, oh, I didn't say, I just was reading all those again. Yeah, you got the continuous improvement, you got, where that's at, because you got literacy there at the bottom of page 1. The literacy trajectory, there's various kinds of student achievement that the state requires. I think it's 4th, 8th grade math. I think that you got all those to do, and then college and career readiness. And then that's just the minimum. You can do is tremendous flexibility, I believe, in this whole continuous improvement plan. I will say the process. Mandy mentioned about the process. I mean, we started this rough draft, and it went through iteration after iteration after iteration. And school boards, associated school administrators, the agencies, governor's office, all kinds of House and Senate members, until we got where we were. This thing got red lines all over it. Finally ended up with 222, which is another. And the only comment I would make on 222, which was the one that actually Matt finished, we're gonna have a commission of 3 House and 3 Senate members. We have a school board member, a administrator, a parent, a business, there's all the different groups. Each got somebody. Actually, Representative Yamamoto and I are on the commission. And we're going to meet in August to look at our statewide data. All the stakeholders in the same room. We're looking at the data. We're going to look at some best. We're going to have some of the best people that knock out of the park around the state present to us. What are you doing? And we're just going to come up with ideas on what needs to happen at the state level. And then in the fall, we're going to look at your CIP tools. We're going to look at all of your CIP plans. And just go through them and try to say, okay, what are these guys doing? What's your goals? And then what we're trying to do there is the state is, we have another bill, Senate Bill 1006, where the state is gonna set some goals. And I think they need to look at you guys' goals and take, like, just like you're not gonna go in your continuous improvement, make goals that don't make any sense with your schools, right? Should be one and the same. We're gonna try to look at this, all the school districts in the state, what are their goals, and then try to come from goals from there. That's the plan, but I mean, I was superintendent of a district of 3 schools, right? Elementary, middle, and high. I mean, managing your district with what, only 20, 25 schools? 24 schools? That's quite a bit bigger animal, right? Can you imagine Julie and I's job trying to do the whole state? It's pretty tricky. But anyway, we think this is gonna get us all focused on literacy, and we really want you guys to really work with your people and set goals. And I just want to reiterate one last time, celebrate. Because when my district went from the bottom quartile, we went to the 95% proficient or better, K1, 2, and 3. We did like 7 or 8 years in a row. You have to have all your everybody's got to get on the same page. The teachers have to have some ownership in this thing. They got to feel like valued. The principals and the curriculum guys got to be in the whole mix. And then you have to monitor every board meeting. You guys have to like care about it, right? You know, and so like when your kid goes and makes a soccer goal, if you were there, it's way better than if you weren't, right? So you take them out and to get McDonald's and get a sandwich or something, it's something, right? So they know you care, because if you don't ever, what kids get to be good, pretty good athletes? The parents that were there, right? So if the school board is there for this process in a nice way, staying in your lane, then your guys will want to do more, and then celebrate. It's really important to celebrate some way, different in every district. In fact, that was the other part of 222. I'll just read the sentence. We told the State Board of Education shall present to the legislature a statewide strategy for defining and rewarding high-performing schools and teachers for growth and student achievement. So they're going to report to us in January what the schools and teachers would like as a reward for being high-performing schools. And we're going to try to get this turned on and turned around a little bit, and so forth. So anyway, that's the grand plan.
How do we, as a school board, stay up to date on these plans and your committee and this reward and all the work that you're doing? How can we get that information and help you and have you?
Yeah, probably. Well, Allison you have a kind of a unique deal because Allison's here. You're talking about the state level. I mean, that's a real unique, almost no school board would have that. But the typical school board, you would have your superintendent, or sometimes they have a person that pays a lot of attention to, like in the Boise district, there's some kind of an assistant that I talk to all the time.
Okay.
Okay. It's always good to have somebody in the district that we can talk to.
We set up a liaison for you.
Yeah. And you need to talk to your guys, and hopefully you guys know who all your legislators are. And Representative Yamamoto is nearby here, and she's in-house ed, and she will know everything going on.
Perfect.
So just, and your superintendent is who I would think would mostly in this, besides your unique having Allison. The superintendents usually in most districts are very involved. And they can report back to you. That's kind of what I think would happen.
Tell them about the training and the program and the training.
Yeah, you got your school boards association and your administrator association, and they really, we work with them a lot. You know, Quinn Perry, right?
Yeah.
If you know her, Quinn and I talk. We even like all these bills. They got their fingerprints on 69. Okay, and this new bill, this that I'm going to talk about in a minute, is they've been given copies of everyone. So the work gets done now, and not that much during the session. I mean, to be honest with you, on these really big bills, you don't have time to work on those like in February. You're just trying to fine tune them. So.
Any other questions?
No, thank you. I appreciate it. It makes a lot of sense to me on some of those things and all the collaboration and all the effort. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
So am I up again?
You are up again.
Okay. Okay, so now this next bill follows last year's bill. Now, did you get iteration 2 or did everyone have 3?
Oh,
There's a
two.
3 fingers there, a 2 and a 2.
Oh, is that your,
You
the email?
me just
I emailed
fragment
3.
of-
It doesn't really matter. Okay,
Oh,
So I
there it is,
emailed
yes.
3.
3.
so y'all have 3 now?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of the way these things work. I mean, you start with this idea and then you start shopping around and a bunch of people get mad usually. And I want to say something. I have been all over the world and I've never seen people read bills. There's a lady here that actually had read House Bill 69 tonight in the board pack. I mean, that's really impressive. I mean, it really is. That doesn't happen. I mean, people get up in front of us, Representative Yamamoto knows, we get people testifying to us that haven't read the bill. Would you please read the bill? I mean, because what you're saying doesn't make any sense. I mean, that was really impressive. So anyway, so the literacy. Okay, so we want to get at that 25% of kids that we're not getting at. So what happened is we got the IRI back in about 2001, okay? And the data, I'm sure Allison tracked that, the data improved gradually till about 2010. We got to about 72, 73% proficient, leveled off, and we have not improved in a decade as a state. We have not improved. We changed the IRI, and the first year after that, the kindergarten went down because it was a little harder, it was a little tougher, more comprehensive. You would expect that, but the other grades almost went straight across. And so it does no indication that there's, and so to get at that other 25%, we're gonna have to do some things differently. You just can't just do the same things, okay? And kind of what's going on is some people wanted to pay for full-time kindergarten out in the legislature last year, and someone said, you know, we put 107 million a year in the career ladder, okay? And everybody said there was gonna be all this academic achievement improvement, and there hasn't been any, okay? Then we started putting a whole bunch of money in literacy funding. It was been $1 million or $2 million for a long time, decade or I don't know how long, but then it's come to 8 million in 2016. And then now it's up to 25 million and we haven't got any improvement. And so then they wanted to put 46 million in the kindergarten. And some of us, especially including me, said, time out. I have no problem funding kindergarten, but I'm not putting one more penny in this thing without some idea that we're going to see some improvement. Not going to do it. End of discussion for Ryan Kirby. Okay. Because I did not go down there to throw money at stuff and stay at 73%. I'm not going there. Okay, and so, and I'm speaking for myself, but there's a bunch of us, there's a whole bunch of us that think that way. So then what do? We need to have conversations. So I put out iteration 1, said, hey, we want to work on this. And the main thing, okay, there's 2 main things that need to happen. And look at Roman numeral 1 there. And that is the bill right now, when they sent 26 million out, if you look there at the lines that are crossed out, it's based on the average number of students in kindergarten through grade 3 who don't pass the IRI. Now, the fewer kids you pass the IRI, the more money you get. Okay, every legislator didn't know that. Every legislator I've pointed out to goes, you have got to be kidding me. There's no way you're kind of like reinforcing that. I mean, and now the theory is that you get the money to the people that need it. That's the theory. Okay, there's a lot of sense behind that. Okay, but people that improve, then they get less money, right? So I've got some superintendents right now, Matt and Hornet, calling me Kirby. We got our IRI up quite a bit, and we're getting a whole bunch less money. And it's not like it's cheaper now. We got all these kids that move in and out of our district all year, and we're throwing resources at them like crazy. We still need the money, but we're not getting it. And so we look at this as a disincentive to improve. Now, that's the legislator's way of looking at it. That is not a lot of the school people's way of looking at it. Just know that not everyone is thoroughly ever happy every moment of every meeting. Okay, so but anyway, so what we're saying is instead of giving the money for not passing it, is 40% of that 25 million will go out for passing the IRI. The more people pass, the more money you get. Now, to keep this from being a good deal for the districts with good demographic, when I say good demographics, with stronger demographics literacy wise, the people that have more money. All of the economic disadvantage, ELL and all those guys, each count double. So if a regular kid passes it, you get, say you got $150 and one of these kids gets it, you get $300. Because it's harder, it takes more money to get those guys, just a fact of life. And we have a lot of debate about that too. And we had when I was representing Yamamoto at a very big district the other day, they had all their smart guys sitting around, I gotta quit saying that, all their guys that really knew this subject really well, sitting around. I offended some people there. All the guys that really know this subject sitting around the room they were researching all these doctors. We just debated that too. And at the end of the day, when I talk to you about Roman numeral 3, you'll see that they agreed that 2 is probably a good number. Double for those kids. And so if you've got a bunch of those kids and you can get them, you start working on it, you can get quite a bit more money. B, 60% of the money will be distributed for kids that make a full year's growth. In other words, they got to make a year's growth, full year, okay? From spring to spring. The problem we have, except the career ladder, is fall to spring. I forgot to do that. It's fall to spring. So the lower, look, you can look at my hand here. You're up here, right? At the end of first grade, drop way down in the summer, right? Now this is where you start the next year. So then you get up to here and so you might make a year's growth from down here to up here, but if you were going from up here to up here, you're not making a year's growth. So we want to talk about spring to spring. Kindergarten be fall to spring. So, and everybody's not happy with this. So that's why we're having so many conversations. A lot of people really appreciate this. So what these two A and B would cause is people are going to have to figure out how to get at those kids, which we haven't been doing. So, obviously everybody's been working on it to varying degrees. It's just, as a state, we haven't made any progress. So for one thing, so then the conversation we're saying is, okay, this is a little tough. Okay, we get it. What laws do you need us to change for you to get this? What rules do you need us to change? What state board, state agents, State Department rules do you need us to change? Which state agency processes would you like us to change? What resources do you need for you to make this? So we're asking everybody this. How can we help you help these kids? Everything is on the table. It's all on the table. Just tell us, we have to have a conversation how to get at these kids. And so a lot of people want full-time kindergarten. That's Roman number 2 there. And so, and the governor's office wants to do something along those lines. They told us, I meet with the governor's people every week on this bill, on this issue. And they want to know the last school district, what's everybody saying anyway. But the way it's written right now, it would probably be for the students with low literacy skills, not everybody. And what's happening there, I don't have a dog in this fight. Some people want it for all kids. And I can see this, but this is in here because there are a lot of legislators that don't want to do kindergarten. They just, at some point you have to just look at, okay, what's the possibilities around here, right? So, but we might be able to get full-time kindergarten through, I don't know, but there's a lot of them that don't want to. And then the question is, so it takes about $50 million to do full-time kindergarten around that. So this is taking about 25 million ballpark to do this. So the question is, if you got 50 million, you put it here, because it will help. It really helps the low readers. This is critical for the low readers. Okay, if a kid comes into kindergarten, you can't read, they need to be in there full-time. When I was superintendent, we brought all those kids in for full-time kindergarten. We didn't bring the rest of them, we brought those kids in, and it makes a lot of difference. The problem we got is research. The last very large district said, we have studied this. We have a lot of high proficiency kids go to full year kindergarten, and the data doesn't show them improving any more if they're full-time than if they're half-time. The kid that comes in proficient. The data just doesn't show up. So I guess somebody's gonna, to get through the legislature, somebody's gonna have to show that data does work. Now we got other school districts that are swearing by full-time kindergarten. Representing Yamamoto, I work in a meeting, boy, they're gonna come heck or high water, they're gonna have full-time kindergarten for everybody. So I'm just on a dog in that fight. Okay. I think, but I do have a dog in the fight getting those 25%. Okay, now, so then number 3 ends up being really critical. To get these kids, it takes more time, which means more money. And they have to have time either after school, time, all the 4-day week guys want to bring them in on Fridays. You gotta have summer schools. You got, or maybe jumpstart kindergartens or jumpstart. Some people want to do summer school in August, 2 weeks in August with the teacher that they're going to have that year, so to speak. So there's all kinds of different ways of getting at this. Some people absolutely refuse to do summer school. It's not good for our district. Other people say that's what we want to do. It's just, I have not, and there's about 8 or 9 legislators working on this with us, 4 or 5 come to various meetings. We don't want to tell anybody, I don't want to tell anybody how to do it. So we wrote number 3 is additional, is some money for additional academic time. So you can do it after school, Saturdays, Fridays, if you're 40 week, summertime, 0 hour, I don't know, whatever you guys want to do. Okay, but it'll be on a grant basis. So you'd have to, make some kind of an application and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. So that's what we're doing. I'm pretty sure I'd be really interested in if you have any comments on this. I mean, we're at the stage, the last 2 very large districts that we spent a long time with are good with this whole deal. Okay, some people are mad at us. I mean, Allison was at a meeting and a couple people were mad at, she saw people be mad at me. Okay. But some of the really thoughtful people are saying, let's get this going. Now here is what makes me feel really good. Those 2 districts said, okay, you're going to make us responsible for summer milk. Okay, we haven't been. In fact, you've paid us more money the farther the kids dropped, right? And it was easier for the teachers to make the growth the next year. And this whole thing, we're not going to ever talk about the teachers. This bills have nothing to do because teachers are already doing their job for 9 months. This is administrators and school boards. Okay. But those guys said, if we're going to do summer milk, okay, we're good with this. We actually think this will work. But we want to know what is actually happening. What are they actually losing in the summertime, right? So they said, okay, so in the spring IRI and the fall IRI are slightly different. So we said, what they're saying is, if they take the spring IRI, we want to be able to give it again in August to the same cohort, the exact same test. So we can drill down and find out exactly what those kids have not remembered or lost or whatever was summer. So we can plan strategies. Summer school, jumpstart, summer reading programs, whatever strategy would take to get out there, but they don't want to, they're not comfortable until they know exactly what the issues are. So that was, to me, that's a process. That's an agency process. So I've contacted the State Department. They're working on that for us. And because there's school districts that are going to start doing that this year, they want to know what's going on. And if we're going to have to do this, they're going to start doing some of that this fall so they can. But anyway, we're running around causing lots of trouble. I guess I don't know what we're doing, but trying to get at this issue. It's been really frustrating for me to see the state not get at it. When I know there's districts around. One big district is over 80% this year, 2nd and 3rd grade, and quite a few. Well, here and there's schools in the 90s, big school, 500 student elementaries. So, geez, how come you can do it? How come more people can't do it? So it can be done.
On your spring to spring, so would that, I think I'm hearing you say a cohort. So if we had a 1st grader who was proficient in spring, when you check on him in 2nd grade, he'd also be proficient, right?
You would just take, so in the IRI, there's like 7 different areas, phonics and reading comprehension, there's all the different areas, right? So you would just take if you were finished the 1st grade, and you went in the 2nd grade, you would take, and so you took the spring 1st grade IRI, and then going into the 2nd grade in August, before the window opened, right, for the fall, you could, if the school district wanted to, take the spring 1st grade IRI again. So you're taking the exact same test. So you can find out exactly what the kid lost. Is it phonics? Well, then that's one conversation for the summer, right? Or the school year. If it's comprehension, it's another conversation. If it's vocabulary, it's a different conversation. They want to know what is actually dropping in the summertime. So we're trying to work on it. We haven't got an answer yet.
So I heard at some point, which I think is similar to Trustee Westfall's question, where you said spring to spring and not fall to spring, that growth piece.
I did say that, and it's written in here.
Yeah, so is that with the cohort? So it's not like we're comparing first graders that took it in spring of 2021 to first graders who are gonna take it in spring of 2022?
No, it's
That cohort.
Yeah, it's each kid. They have the
Right,
technology.
yeah.
It's each kid. So little Billy Smith in the second grade got thus and such of a score. A 222
Yeah,
scale score. Well, and to be proficient, and he was barely proficient. Now he has to get a 232 to be proficient into this next grade. Okay, so did he make 232 or not?
okay, and.
How many kids? And so a certain amount of money for every one of those kids that made a full year's growth. And the thinking there, we don't want to use proficiency in the spring because we want if you were around during No Child Left Behind, they worked on that bubble kid, right? We spent all our time trying to get kids proficient. So if you were just barely under that bubble, we really pour the resources to you, heck with all high kids or whatever, low kids. We want every kid to make a year's growth. Some people say low kids are harder. Some people say the high kids are harder. But we want every kid to make a year's growth. However low or however high they come in, take them along. Don't ignore one group to solve another problem. So anyway. Okay, yeah, mobility. So that was one thing that really came up is kids move around all the time. They start in Nampa, then they go to Cuna, and then they end up in Parma. Okay. So, and that's a tricky kid. So I was talking to one superintendent, and they really work on this one small district up in my district. But so those kids come rolling in January, February, March. They're pouring resources to those kids, trying to get them proficient by the spring. So the way we're gonna, I need a phone call right now. It's actually a Senate Ed chairman want to know how things went tonight. We're not done yet. I'll call him back. Anyway, so these kids move around. So in ISAT, this mobility deal is tricky. In ISAT, you have to be in the district 80% of the year, right? 80% of the year, or you don't get into the accountability. So if a kid's gone 2 months, I mean, you're not in it. I mean, so hopefully you'll keep working with them, but I mean, you can see that some people might not as much, right? So what we're saying is wherever the kid's at when they take the test, we'll give that district the money. So if they end up here and they get the year's growth, we'll give you the money. There's no data that we're trying to set this up where somebody can't say, well, you did bad because your percentage proficient wasn't. You're going to get the money for every kid that makes it. It's going to be really hard for some outside group to say some district did a bad job. You're just going to be trying like heck to get the money. I'm not. That's probably a legislative thing. Hope no educators heard me say that. Okay, but anyway. We ought to be so careful to try not to offend people, and they try not, and we get offended back and forth. But anyway.
You have a question?
I do. Can I get a reminder on when we test our kindergartners for the fall IRI?
This is September.
It's September.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's a window and then
kindergartners.
And then your team, right, has to choose which dates you're going to do it. There's a window.
Okay.
It's in September.
So as I look at this and I'm thinking, okay, so our funds are appropriated based upon kids that pass or proficient in the fall IRI, where schools have 3 weeks in front of these new kindergartners.
They have all summer.
Okay, and so that's where I went. Now I understand why they want summer school with their teacher to prepare and prep and maybe get these kids ready.
Yeah,
And so my question would be.
or not summer school. Maybe one school district said that we're not doing that. We're gonna work hard after school every 3 days a week all year. I mean, we're not gonna tell you how to do it, but we're just gonna quit saying, okay, whatever happens from May to September is nobody's problem, because legislature is looking at that and we expect growth. Okay, we're spending $2 billion,
Sure.
and we want this some growth.
And I'm totally hearing you. And when you're talking about item B there, which is more, right? You've got
Right.
60% for that growth portion
Right.
on the next level of kids. I'm tracking with you 100%. I like how you're doing spring to spring cohort, all of it. It's the 40% where we have no control. And these aren't kids that we just missed over the summer. We haven't had them at all. And there were a lot of years that in the legislation, you talked about pre-kinder funding. And there was a lot prior to kindergarten. I like that you're getting kindergarten right. So we're not getting the cart before the horse. But I can see where this part could be difficult when you have a lot of kids not even going to preschool. We suddenly get them in, all of a sudden they're being tested. We've got a long way to go with them. So I don't know, in thinking and looking at this, if there might be some flexibility or some conversations. I don't know if there are winter RIRI or a way for just this first portion to maybe give districts a little more time with the kids.
Yeah, we can have all kinds of conversations, but I mean, by then you're gonna make up a lot, but okay, so we do not want to fund based on how many kids fail, okay, period.
Correct.
Okay, so now the other thing is, you have the whole, what this is really doing is getting that whole spring to fall conversation going. Because if you ask the legislature, we just expect these kids to be learning, right? We expect, okay, so when people say, well, I don't know, parent didn't want to bring them to summer school, so, it's too bad. Well, I talked to a school district that has never had summer school. And they really got going on this. And so they got all their teachers together and talked, and they got a really good relationship with the parents. They had summer school in summer because you guys had that, what was that new funding? The learning loss funding. They had summer school with all the kids need to be there. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the reading programs, they're having a little bookmobile go down around to all the places where you guys dispersed lunches last year, right? They're going out all summer with books to those places and let kids check them out, and they have their accelerated reading program. A kid can get in there, get a little iPad, take a test on a book, turn it in, take another book. Why not? I mean, this cat could be skinned. I'm just not gonna say, no, we're not giving up on this. We're not gonna give up.
No, I was a mom who had her kids in full-time kindergarten and didn't come into the district until that happened with my kiddos and that. And I do believe that there are absolutely a lot of data when you get those kids going before that third grade. So I love where all this is going on that track. You would just like to see that districts that have maybe higher demographic of folks that are paying for preschools and those kinds of things, those kids are going to come in and pass those IRIs.
That's why we give these guys double, and so I should have said, that brings up.
Yeah, that's true.
So we had that discussion with the other district.
Okay.
They said it takes 3 times as much time to bring those kids up.
Okay.
Okay, but so you're gonna pay double.
Are
Okay,
you paying double for the ones that pass with a proficient?
yeah, so that's gonna give you double if you can, now, but that's gonna mean you're gonna put more money into those kids so you can get them proficient. Okay, it's gonna cost more money to get them there. So you're gonna have to put more money. Then Roman numeral 3, you're gonna get more money for additional academic time. So you're gonna, between Roman numeral 3 and that double, you're gonna get triple. You should be able to come close to triple time for those kids. I should also say preschool, that's like a real hot item.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, I read Thomas Jefferson book, and he kept talking about the art of the possible. Okay, that isn't gonna happen, okay? Preschool's not gonna happen in the legislature right now. So, Pro, con, okay, it's not gonna happen, so I am not gonna spend much time on that subject.
Yes.
I'm gonna try to work on stuff that might happen.
Yeah.
That,
Probably no point talking about preschool if I can't even get the kindergarten conversation going, right?
let's get, yeah, let's get a win, so we can go around the state and go, hey, you know what? Hey, we actually got some better learning here. We can celebrate a little bit instead of keep missing all of our targets, which is what's going on. Allison knows very well, probably Paula. We've been missing all of our targets, and then we look dumb and we're not do that anymore.
So my last question is currently in the state of Idaho, kinder is not required, correct?
Yeah,
Is that a law that you're
it's
also?
a constitution, yeah. 6 years old, not 5.
Right, so this is all talking about the funding portion of it, which is
Yeah.
awesome, right? I mean.
No requirement of any kind,
Is that something that you're also looking into
No,
simultaneously?
not even close.
Oh, really?
Because why would we go there? I mean, if let's just fund it, if you want to go, go. We have homeschool. If you don't want to do, you can homeschool anyway. I mean, it's just homeschooling. I don't even just go homeschool if you want to. So there's no, it's just not even it's not going to accomplish. I don't know. I'm trying to stay out of fights. I'm trying to encourage and give people platforms to work from and provide the resources and the laws and the rules. Now, you'd be surprised how many people in higher echelons say, we're on the wrong track here. We need to increase enforcement. Oh, geez. Yeah, I'm sure people are going to really become passionate and really try to improve things if they know they're going to get busted in chops. I said, can we please, if this doesn't work, y'all do that, okay? But anyway, actually, more of those conversations than you might think.
Oh, no, no doubt.
So, just tell those guys, forget it. So, Julie, we're having to have pretty thick skin around here, aren't we?
Well, it is.
So anyway,
Do the best we can.
Yeah.
So I heard you ask, like, what are some things that you guys can do to help
yes,
us to be successful? And then, so I have something, at least one thing. But I feel that this changes when funding occurs, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's more that because in the fall is typically with that fall IRI is how the district would then know and the state would then say, here's how many were not proficient. So here's the funding you're going to get for this school year. So
you
then
get that money till
then-
February, do you?
then funding goes in, or districts know that they have funding coming in to maybe hire more folks to help. Because like you said, it takes 3 times the amount of time to help with the some of these kiddos. Where now it sounds like districts really wouldn't know until the spring. Did we meet? Because it's a spring to spring or fall to spring for kindergarten is how I'm reading it. So it's kind of like, did the work and money you put in show proficiency in the spring? And if so, then you're going to get funded for we're going to pay you for what the plan that you had and the work that you executed.
Okay, so let me.
It's
address
kind of
that.
how it sounds like.
Okay, so that would be a valid concern if, depending on how we're gonna do this, but way we'll do it is, so we'll look at this fall IRI and the prior, so it'll be so let's just say this was in force right now.
Okay.
We look at the 21 spring IRI.
Okay.
Did they make a year's growth from 20 to 21? Okay, so last May, how did those go? That'd be B.
Okay,
And then A would be this fall. And so you're gonna know just as fast as you would now.
okay.
You're gonna know that you're
So
gonna-
you'd go back, it wouldn't be like, we're
right.
gonna start with 2021. If if this passes, you're gonna go a year back because the IRA is being taken.
That's a really important question. That's
Okay.
how we would do it, to make sure we didn't have the problem you
Okay.
bringing up.
Perfect, because that was a worry, but
Yeah, no.
I think you cleared it up for me that it would be the funding, like you'd know in the fall
Right,
for A and B,
yes,
both of those things,
You
the
would.
amount of funding for your district
Yes.
are roughly based on your numbers.
right.
Perfect. One thing I think, minimum wage.
Okay,
You asked, and I know you don't want to hear it. Okay,
go ahead.
and you don't want to make people mad, but that mobility issue occurs a lot of times because families aren't making enough money and making a living wage. And so if and I know you've probably looked at the data, at inflation and how much people's income and wages are increasing. Well, the inflation is exponentially growing compared to something that's constant for the most part. I mean, as a mathematician, there's not a lot of increase in the wage. And that's not a you problem. It's an all of us problem and a hard one to tackle and look at. But when you really ask, and I think about the students within this community that are struggling, that having parents not making a living wage is a big one that causes our kiddos to be moved around and shuffled, or to miss school, to babysit siblings and things like that. So it's a big piece of it. And I know it's not going to get fixed tomorrow or this legislative session, but I'm gonna be honest and truthful about and that's the big one that I think would make a lot of help for a lot of people.
Well, thank you.
So,
I mean, I'm not in those committees, but I certainly see the connection you're making to education.
yeah,
I'm really concerned about those guys who having some place to live, for crying out loud. With the
Yeah.
housing prices, that's turned into a huge issue.
yes.
So, thank you.
Quick follow-up question on that funding, since it's retroactive later, but for those kids of that year, if the districts do choose to use that into a summer school, which is June, July or earlier, will we
It would be
be
for the
reimbursed
following summer
retroactive
school,
on
yeah.
that?
Well, it'll be for the following summer school.
Yeah, for the following.
Following summer school for the next?
So the budget, so you would be budget, when you passed budgets,
Okay,
okay?
thank you. Yeah.
The one, I should say one other thing, now that you brought that up.
Yeah.
That is, right now, you get this money based on a 3-year rolling average. You see that prior 3 years, it's crossed out there. So the latest discussion we had with the governor's office, they're concerned because this would be a different way of doing it. So there wouldn't be 3 years worth of data. But what we're talking about now is using the 2 years of the prior way and then this way. And then the next year, 1 of the prior way, 2 new, and then on the 3rd year. So that would provide more stability for districts and give people a chance to kind of get this thing rolling, and
That makes sense.
he feels like that's a really big deal. And I hadn't thought of it, but I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to
Yes,
come in.
appreciate it.
We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Good questions.
Yeah, that was really, really a rich discussion. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
I'm gonna have us pause for just a moment. We do have, we'll maybe take like a 3-minute break for our trustee to get back here. But it will be Claudia Friend. Is Claudia Friend here? Yes, perfect. So the back to school plan is next, so we'll have you speak first.
No, are you guys presenting first and then I get to ask questions, or do I ask my questions?
So this is time for you to address us and give us information. So it's not a question answer. Does that make sense? So
Or
it's,
that you guys were gonna be presenting your plan for the next school year.
well, we are going to be hearing that as well, which is in the agenda.
So, but you guys have us testify before.
Typically, that's how we've done it in the past. Yeah, okay.
And can I ask one more question? So
Sure.
when I come up and testify, can I address some of the things he was talking about, the IRA? Not that I want to address, but I wanted to kind of ask a question or two about the IRA, or maybe just say something from a parental stand on the IRA and how those tests are done.
So because you've signed up to speak to something else, but I'm more than willing if after the meeting you want to just one-on-one and I'll get your questions because we're willing to hear those. Does that sound okay?
Sure, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So yeah, Claudia, if you'll want to come up and address us, thank you.
So I guess I just assumed it would be that you guys would present and then we would ask questions.
So, sorry, audience, we want to be efficient, so if you need to have some conversations, we understand. If you'll just step out to have those, and you do know it's 3 minutes,
Sure.
correct? And Ms. Wallen here will have a timer, and so will it beep or sound or, okay,
I
so,
probably won't even take the 3 minutes.
okay, perfect.
So I guess my questions are, my concerns or questions would be as to what the plan is for next school year. I know last year threw everybody for a loop, and my concerns would be mask mandates, vaccine mandates, and critical race theory. So I would like to know where we stand on those issues. California is trying to implement mask mandates again. CDC has come out and said if a child is not vaccinated, they must wear a mask the next school year. The CDC has also, or there is an organization, and I didn't catch the name of it, and it has to do with the school districts have said that if a child is not vaccinated, they are not allowed to go to school in the fall. So basically trying to mandate the COVID vaccine. So I guess as a parent, and we see that in the medical system right now, where St. Al's, St. Luke's are, and West Valley, I believe it is, that are trying to mandate the vaccine, or the nurses lose their jobs. And so I'd like to know if you guys have discussed that at all, or if it is in future plans to where you guys discuss that. So those are my concerns.
And yeah, if I'll connect with you if at the end, or if you need to leave earlier.
Okay, no, I'll wait, I'll connect. with
Perfect,
you.
thank you. Excellent, so back to school.
So Dr. Russell's just going to present on what the plan is and how it was developed.
Excellent, thank you.
Trustee Simpson and Chairman Simpson, trustees, thank you for giving me an opportunity to chat with you tonight. Exactly as Dr. Keller had mentioned, we're going to go through our school back to school plan. You remember in our June board meeting and our June work session, we had shared with you our overall goal of our plan was to operate schools as normal as possible. And personally speaking, my hope was not to have a school back to school plan. My hope was to be able to open school as we have every single year prior to COVID. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but what you will see as a goal from our plan is to be able to ensure that we are operating schools as normal as possible, so that we can ensure we have a high quality education and safe learning environment. Next slide, please. So just to give you a little bit of background of why we have to have a back to school plan, this is something that was kind of sprung on us very late. We received an email, superintendents received an email on June 30th from the State Department of Education indicating that schools would be required to have a back to school plan. That was to receive some of the federal funds from the government. We did not know what that would really entail until July 7th, when there was a webinar with the Idaho State Department of Education, which kind of explained all the criteria that would be required from it. And then they gave us the due date, which is due August 2nd. So it's extremely kind of short turnaround for that. Their recommendation was to modify the current plan that was on file with the state board. And so you'll see, that's why it has a similar format, but there's actually a great deal of changes in it. So that's why it might look familiar. So we just wanted to highlight for you the differences of this plan compared to last year. First of all, as one of our patrons had shared their concerns, there is no mask requirement. We dealt with that as a school district last year, and the board made a decision on that. We are going to honor that and continue moving forward. It is optional if families choose to do that, but at this point, it's no requirement. No COVID-19 vaccination will be required. We encourage individuals to receive that if they so choose, but there is no vaccine requirement to be able to attend school. Because we're expecting to operate as normal as possible, there will be no physical distancing requirements for buildings or events. And again, considering the size of some of our schools, it's extremely hard to do when everyone's back, and so we will not require that. There will be no restrictions on gatherings or sporting events. I'll share a little bit about sports as we get further into it, but at this point, no restrictions on that. Our goal is to operate as normal as possible, so we'll be back in school 5 days a week. We'll still have the early release on Wednesdays as we have in our previous schedule, but we will plan on attending school every day that we can. One of the other two requirements that the state asks us to do is to ensure that we have some sort of coverage for social emotional learning around students and staff and how we would support those. And so you'll see there's some guidance on some of the things that we're doing around that for our students and staff. And then supporting student learning and programs is another requirement. So some similarities, some of the things that you'll see with this year's plan similar to last year's was we would highly recommend not coming to school if you're sick or ill. That's nothing new. Still encourage that. Informing school if you are ill or sick. Again, that's very helpful. And again, very typical of what we've always asked in the past, that if you're feeling ill or sick, please let the schools know. Preventative practices, still have signage, encourage respiratory etiquette. You know, that's sneezing in to your elbow or shoulder. Sanitizing and cleaning is something we would still expect. And ventilation, hand washing, and then having a plan for ill students in the school. So if a student feels ill, what is the plan for them? Again, very similar to what we've had in the past when students have had colds or flus or headaches or whatever it may be. That schools will have a plan to address ill students there. The other option is you'll see is we still have NOVA as an online school option for families that would like to access that, and they'll provide that education as well for them. Just a couple of highlights I wanted to point out in the plan. So if a student is found to be COVID-19 positive, currently we would still follow the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare guidelines. And I say currently because my understanding is the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare is going to review these at some point. But the idea would be to do what we have done last school year, which is to remain home for at least 10 days after the illness onset and 24 hours after fever is gone without the use of fever reducing medication and having other symptoms improve. That is if someone is tested positive. If someone is symptomatic, that means they have not had the test or they're not confirmed. You know, some of those symptoms, just put them up there for a reminder of fever, cough, chills, loss of taste or smell. We would encourage testing to occur. Otherwise, that student would need to remain home for 24 hours until their fever is gone without the use of fever, reducing medication and other symptoms are improving. So I know there's questions around quarantining and contact tracing. So quarantining would not be required. The only quarantine would be required is if a student does test positive with confirmed COVID. They would need to be 10 days out. And then contact tracing, there would not be required unless there was a substantial outbreak. And so one of the things you'll see there is looking at if there is at least 3% of the student body within the school has a positive COVID test. Then what we would do at that point would contact Southwest District Health and look for guidance. It'd be very similar to what we would do if we had pertussis or something like that. That number comes from just talking to other school districts, called around the valley to see what they're doing. This is something similar Valley View is doing as well. I wanted to check and see 3% of the student body, really what is that? So to put it in perspective for one of our high schools with 1,200 students, that would be about 36 confirmed cases. Last year, at the height of our illness, which was around December, Christmas time, the most we had is 26. So it's really, we got close to about a little over 2.5%. We did not reach that 3%, so it'd be pretty substantial if we did. Don't anticipate reaching that considering the vaccinations that we have and the level of community spread, which is low at this point. So just want to add that there for you. Parent notification, just to be clear, if there is a confirmed case of COVID in the elementary school, we would notify the classroom what that student is, because the nature of secondaries with students transitioning between classes and being all over campus, we would send that out to all families in the school. And that letter would likely just indicate that there is a confirmed positive case in the school, that to check for symptoms and to contact your local health official if you medical assistance. So athletics, the State Department of Ed did not require us to have an athletics plan or to address that anyways. Our goal in athletics and events is to operate as normal as possible. I talked with Mr. Bonds today, talked through this a little bit. There has not been a lot of guidance from the Idaho High School Athletic Association. They have said follow your district's plan. So in a lot of ways, this would be very similar to what we do in athletics. We're going to hold events, practices as we normally have. If students are ill, they would follow similar guidelines. If they test positive, they would need to be out for 10 days. If they have symptoms, they would need to at least be healthy for 24 hours and not have symptoms. And have to use medication to get back in. We would sanitize appropriately as we need. But again, the idea is to get back to normal as close as we could through our events and things. And of course, if things change with our high school athletic association or SIC or something like that, we'll try to work and partner with them. So, quick overview of the back to school plan that we're required to file with the State Department, and I'm happy to entertain questions you may have.
Any questions?
Was there a requirement around parent involvement, parent feedback on our plan? And how?
Yeah, so one of the, asked that question, one of the encouragements from the State Department was to use our current plan because those plans had a great deal of parent involvement. So one thing we did do is we did send it out to our reopening committee last year. I did email that out, received a couple of feedbacks from that. The feedback from that group, and it wasn't a large group, I think it was about 6 individuals that were able to respond. Said they thought it was reasonable, it was sensible. They recommended maybe having a little stronger language and not, it was encouraging not to come to school sick. They said just maybe don't come to school sick. Other than that, it was just some sensible to that. So that was what we thought could be the best way to get the quickest feedback with it.
Are you feeling like, I mean, I think too, because we were getting feedback throughout the entire year, I feel like it reflects our parents and our community and the feedback we were getting all year, but I mean.
I agree with that. I think for our community and what we've heard and things that I had heard towards the end of the year of how they were hoping we would be able to start with the fall. I think this reflects a lot of that, reflects a lot of the common sense and the typical policies that we always had, 24 hours after a fever, those kinds of things. And so I'm comfortable with it.
Just as a reminder, we do have another plan that we get to submit that's due October 1. And there will be more extensive input. This one is around the ESSER 3 monies and the use of that. And there is a broader requirement for stakeholder input.
The last bit of information, so you're aware, is we will post this on our district website, a link, so that the community can see that, and then we need to send that link along with a checklist of yes and no's to the State Department of Ed to verify, and they will go to our district website to ensure that it's publicly facing.
Thank you for putting that together so quickly, so last minute with the little time they gave me.
Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the 2021-2022 back to school plan as proposed.
I'll second that. It's moved by trustee Ross, seconded by trustee Simpson. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I think I did. Thanks.
Any questions or discussion? Excellent. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay.
So the next item on the agenda, trustees, during your work session, you spent a lot of time looking at the details. We invited a representative from the city to speak to the approval of this right away. And so tonight, we would encourage you to take some action. And Mr. Juris is here if you have additional questions. No additional questions came our way after the work session, so.
Yeah, these are questions or motion.
I'll move that we approve the Minneapolis School District right of way as proposed.
Second. All right, so it was moved by trustee Ross, seconded by trustee Westfall.
So trustee Simpson, I just want to clarify what we're actually taking, my fault. So there is a process here, remembering that when we dispose of any type of land, we have to go out and get approval. So what you're doing tonight is really encouraging us to move forward with that process. And then after the appraisal is secured, we would like to bring that back so that you're very aware of what the value is that you're actually sharing with the city.
Okay. So I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, is that you said tonight we're approving the process to where we'll get the appraisal, that will come back, and then there would be another
We will bring
possible.
that information back to you. We think it's important that you know what that value is.
But so my question is, does this, what we're approving tonight, not only like approve the appraisal and the procedure, but also the donation? Not yet.
So what we're
Okay,
hoping you'll do is you'll give us permission to follow the procedure to get to the point where you can make a determination at a future meeting.
on gifting,
Hopefully
one way
not.
or the other. Okay,
I'll amend my motion to
okay,
say that I move that we approve the process to begin the right of way or as proposed by the city.
you okay with that?
Oh, yeah. Is that
Perfect.
specific enough or do you need it?
No, I think that would be appropriate. Thank you.
Did you catch that, Tammy?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other question or discussions on that?
I appreciate the pause, for sure. It is very common for folks to remunerate or pay for those amounts of land that's taken. This was a small amount, and I did feel that we were getting some positives, but I appreciate the process to go through to know what that number is and to really have opportunity for legal to also look at that and give us further counsel on what that may be as we move forward in it. So it is a prudent step, so I appreciate it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay.
All right, the next item we have listed as high school handbook. I do think that we pulled the middle school handbook. So, and what we're talking about is the portion of those handbook that's common to the district where all the legal stuff, discipline stuff lives that the board is responsible for.
Perfect. So we're gonna start, Kristen.
Hi, my name is Kristen, and I am speaking on behalf of many NAMPA parents who, like myself, are very concerned after reading over the student handbook and reopening plan. The information given is very conflicting. On multiple occasions, we have come to you and asked for transparency, and I find it rather odd that after sitting through many board meetings, how frequently things are conveniently left out and not discussed publicly with the board. To make matters worse, you're going to your Remind app only to notify parents, which according to one teacher, has as many holes as a block of Swiss cheese. After sitting through and listening to the last meeting, we realized multiple things were left out while discussing the student handbook with the board. This is a huge issue. I'd like to stress the fact that all parents should be aware of what they are signing, and as it is now a requirement and no longer an option in order for their student to attend school. Let's discuss a few examples. Emergency alerts will be sent out with your messaging alert system only. There is no longer an email or phone call to notify parents. What about in the case of an extended absence? According to the handbook, you are no longer required to provide makeup work if requested. Isn't this strange? Because I always thought a school or school board would always want to provide kids with the best education possible. With this, I'd like to quote the last sentence in the handbook where it states, if an outbreak of contagious disease occurs, students not immunized will be excluded from school attendance. Maybe it's just me, but I read it in between the lines and worded it in my own words. I read it as, if your student has COVID and is not vaccinated, then they can't come to school and no makeup work will be provided. How else are you going to discriminate against kids and refuse to take, or against kids that refuse to take the vaccination? Shouldn't a school board's primary focus be student focused and student centered? Your mission statement clearly says the mission of NSD is to ensure high levels of achievement for every student. I'm fairly certain that every means the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. How do students achieve the highest levels of achievement when being refused their work and then required to make up lost learning? I think we need to get back to the big picture, student-focused and student-centered. So my last question is, are you aware of the many changes in the handbook? Because if not, how can you vote on this as a board?
So we remember we just discussed in our work session for this month and decided to pull the high school handbook because we had some questions and to clear some things up. And then also moving the middle school handbook as trustee Ross. And I'm happy to start with either one of those.
Chairman, since our question form wasn't working, so I had emailed some questions to Dr. Russell, who I think gave them to Mr. LeBou.
Mr. LeBou, yes.
And it hits on some of the things I think we heard.
Okay.
So. Okay.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, trustees, for the opportunity to talk about the handbook. The first piece of the handbook, one of the questions that came in from a patron was around COVID in particular, and there was a question about why COVID was addressed and the language around the possibility that masks could be required. That language is also similar or it is exactly the same in the middle school handbook. The masking piece was not addressed in the elementary handbook the year before because the elementary handbook was approved at an earlier date. So that was one piece that I wanted to clear up. Mrs. Young mentioned the removal of a piece of language around work, makeup work. And the attention that I draw to the board is there is a section right underneath that entitled makeup work and the process that requires students and or parents to work to request makeup work. So it lived in two different places. And so it was simply removed from the one place and added, or it wasn't added, it was removed, but it wasn't removed to mean we're not going to give work, but if students need work, they need to request it. I think maybe a piece of clarity too, makeup work at an elementary school is a little bit different beast than makeup work at a high school. If you call it to excuse your student and say that they're absent, it could be 8 different teachers across 3 different campuses. And to put that, I don't know if I'll use the word burden, but responsibility on that office staff member seemed copious. And so the responsibility for that work really does live with the older students. Those were the ones that I could remember off the top of my head, but I know Trustee Westfall, you had a couple of others. And I'm happy to speak to.
Chronic absences is the change from time to learning.
Oh. Yeah, let me speak to that just a little bit. One of the things that we're working on, we're definitely, I guess evolving would be the term that I would use. The constant for us has always been around time, seat time. So time in your seat is what has earned you a credit. And that's how accreditation has worked. And we're really beginning to move from it being less about the time in the seat and about the learning. So it was an intentional move to focus on learning rather than time.
Then on tattoos, and it was just a wondering there, because the language is inappropriate or offensive. Because we're pretty specific on images on t-shirts and things like that. Would it be similar for a tattoo?
Yeah, Dr. Russell and I actually discussed that a little bit, and I've had numerous conversations with our deans around that. Some of the specificity that we have employed in clothing, well, the specificity has been out of a necessity. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending upon how you view tattoos, tattoos have not, it hasn't been a thing, quite frankly, to have to ask students to hide inappropriate tattoos. So we would certainly be happy to consider that language, but from our deans and our administrators, inappropriate tattoos has not become an issue yet. And we're gonna knock on wood that stays that way.
And one of the other, in the area of discipline, some information was struck out, but it still is in the that section. The mischievous behavior are,
After school detention,
thank you.
or
LD.
after school and lunch detention.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that the intent in moving it or keeping it in mischievous and removing it from consequences, our feeling was that if it did its job, then it would have addressed the issue as mischievous. To repeat it, it's kind of that definition of insanity to continue a process or a consequence, so to speak, that wasn't effective the first time. And so consequences tend to be the next level.
and then the immunization question. So the outbreak happens, students not immunized, and it says will be excluded.
So the conversation that, the conversation that Dr. Russell and I had around that is currently that has been our process, but it wasn't new language. It's, so I think that's language that we could probably use some guidance from the board around what would be the best language to use. And then making that consistent across all 3 levels of handbooks.
I was hoping, I think we were hopeful that we would see that document from Health and Welfare in time to format.
It's getting closer.
So just want to share the rough draft was received, which is great news. What they asked for us to do is give some feedback from the district. So sent that out to our head nurse and have her review it, as well as Anita, who has, or Ms. Christensen, who has some folks on her health and safety team. We'll send out to the school nurses to get some feedback. They would like to have that feedback by July 30th, but it is progressing. So I think we will have some guidance on that. That may help us in this wording as well.
And I'm just looking at 33.512, which are the roles and responsibilities of trustees. And it really, the law, and our attorney can comment on this, really doesn't give us a lot of leeway. It says to exclude. And so it is a role and responsibility of the trustees. And I'm sure that's where that language emerged from, was from the code.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, that code's been around, I think, since as long as when I started school. So it's not a COVID related thing. I just think in light of COVID, maybe people are thinking about it a little bit differently.
Outside of students staying home, we really haven't had to implement anything like this because it hasn't been out of control. So I think the intent of this would be, it's wild, it's out of control. We have children who are not vaccinated for whatever reason, and then we're no longer a safe environment if we have, pertussis everywhere, or the measles. So Oregon used this maybe 18 months ago in order to make sure that they didn't have kids on campus that could get measles when they weren't able to control it. So we, to my knowledge, have never used an exclusion like this.
And again, that's why we wanted to see that now that we know so much more. How might we do that? Would there ever be a circumstance where there was, a sick kindergartner who was never in contact with a 5th grader, And so would it always be, you're not vaccinated, you'll be out for a while. So
I think in most cases, our desire to communicate with parents allows the parents to make that choice until we're at a point where we just have it everywhere and we can't keep students safe.
Yep.
That, if I remember right, that's for staff as well, right? So if
Yes, you have
we
the
had
responsibility to exclude staff.
a staff member that didn't have the measles vaccination or hadn't been exposed to it, it would be a similar.
Exactly.
And then the other question was around Remind and its capabilities of emailing, calling, notifying parents. And Greg, you answered
Yeah,
that.
just real quickly, Remind was brand new last year because it was new and the fact that COVID opened up. Much of the difficulties that we received from patrons was how that app was set up. There are certain settings that can help remind, pun not intended, to help you receive certain notifications to help you get information. Our goal this year is the fact that we can now hopefully operate as normal. We'd have normal back to school events, normal abilities to educate parents on how to set that up and get that running. We hope that that would help with a lot of the communication. As a parent myself, I was able to set it up and it worked well, but I also knew other folks that it didn't work as well. There was too much notification. Teachers were sending it a variety of different ways. So bottom line is we need to get better training, more specific with it. We'd like to be able to try it out this year again. If we still have some of the similar issues this year, then I think we need to maybe look at possibly a different solution. But we believe if we can educate and get it set up correctly, we hope it'd be more productive this school year.
You had also shared some information about the percentages of our families with smartphones.
Yes, thank you. So one of the questions that came in from Trustee Westfall is what is it that we do for folks that may not have a smartphone and the ability for Remind? One of the things that we did last year during COVID is we had to get an idea of how many folks had access to the internet or a smartphone. It was over 95%, I believe, that we were able to find out how that's the vast majority of our families do. For those that don't, able to encourage them to contact the schools, and the administration will be able to work with them on ensuring that they can receive the notification that they need. But the vast majority of our families do have access at a very bare minimum to a smartphone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those questions. If I may?
Yes.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Maybe I'll just stay.
Am I good?
No, because I'll just, or maybe I can just jump off of those conversations because
And I think a lot of mine as I went through got answered because same thing, like you said, I could tell it was cleaning up. I think our eye was quickly drawn to blue and red. And then as we really spent time reading it, it was, oh, well, that's set over here. And that was duplicated or crossed over there. I agree. I found a lot of those things. The other one I had on the standards-based grading has been changed since the workshop. So thank you for finding that and recognizing the change to weighted on the AP classes. That's helpful. Can you help me understand on the grade conversion in your blue, there's two different, number one is a course GPA with A is a 4, B is a 3, and down the line. And then there's the second one of an Otis Ross score. What's the difference between the two?
There's the Otis, it is where grades are capped.
Okay.
So that is basically the grade book. The grade book lives in Otis.
So Otis does a computer calculation. It takes the 4 from an A and 3 from the B, and in real time, it'll calculate a decimal that will be on the student-facing page.
Okay.
So a student or parent at every time in the classroom will be able to see, I have a 2.73.
Okay.
Which if you go to the conversion would say, I am a B right now, currently. One of the things that it didn't do last year was do that real time. So as the teacher goes in and updates, you got a B on this assignment, you got a C on assignment, that decimal will change, 2.65, 2.70, 2.81, et cetera, so that it's real time.
Okay.
So that will give the indication to families that I know where I am at all times in my grade.
Okay.
And then the semester grade is when you take the AB seeing and transfer that over to that percentage over into on the transcript so that the student has a transcript that reads A, B, or C.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't use the ABC table of the Otis Ross score the same as the course GPA? Is there a reason why those are different? That A is a 4, B is a 3? Because in the Otis Ross score, a 3 and a 4 is an A.
So there's a 1/10 of a point difference.
There
that
is,
what
and
you're
that,
talking about?
well, yes. And actually, the B would be like a 2.5. So I didn't know if that course raw score down there was how Otis did the calculation, and then you got a number. And then when you went to your course GPA, if it changed. Because that's how I think I might be reading this, but I'm not sure I'm interpreting it right.
Do you want me to speak to that, Greg?
Yeah, I'm trying to find where,
Um,
I see that, I'm trying to find the question. Where
Page 7, I think.
where she seeing the difference of 10%.
She's saying right here, A in the Otis Ross score is.
And maybe the raw score.
Oh, because right here it says 3.
Because
Oh, gotcha. Yes, we could easily change that to 2.99 or 3, or change the other conversion as well. I see what you're saying now, Trustee Ross, that makes sense.
so the course, your intent was for the Otis Ross score to be what the class score is, and for that to also translate into your
Correct.
GPA score, for it to all roll up and be the same.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you for pointing that out. It's the 1/10 percentage point that we'll need to make sure that they all match.
Yeah, because the B actually goes down to a 2.5, the A goes down to a 3. You have that full range, which is really nice to see. And I appreciate the update knowing that it's real time instead of last year, I think we didn't know as parents till semester.
Yeah, that's not,
So having that update, and maybe we can say course GPA and raw score is all the same in this chart,
Sure.
which makes a lot of sense.
So, and then one additional piece then is, so those grades then are transferred to Power School, and that's where the transcripts.
Are generated.
Yes, and that's where it was for high schoolers that are translating that to a grade and putting that on their transcripts. That's where the proof is in the pudding for them.
So for some parents, we have room to help educate them in how to access Otis, because there were some parents who were kind of looking to Power School for grades and not seeing that.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, so that's helpful on that. My next question, still in the high school, was under search of personal items. I don't know what page that's on, sorry. The first sentence says, searches may be conducted when a reasonable suspicion exists that a crime has been committed, was the old one. We've added that a school rule has been violated or that a crime has been committed. Can you just help me with an example of a school rule being violated that would prompt a search of a vehicle, locker, clothing of a student?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. On my toes, trying to think of an example that might clarify that. I think the intent, Trustee Ross, was to not limit ourselves to only criminal offenses, but to include things that.
I hear you, and I think on the flip side of that, we open up to any school. You were tardy today. That's a school rule in the handbook. And I don't mean that that's going to happen, but it really kind of can read that way. And so I would love to maybe keep it back to a crime if we're going to do a search and seizure that's serious, or put some different thought into that. So that was my other potential concern of, I don't want anyone to you can go either way, abuse it or need a little more leeway.
So if we found a way to exclude those minor things, I'm thinking, in the case of a harassment issue, which may not be a legal issue, but certainly is a violation and there's evidence of either pictures or graffiti or something, we would maybe want to be able to look at a locker or to look at that, but it wouldn't necessarily be a criminal act. Could be. So what I hear you saying is that you're concerned that it's broad, and it could be if you're tardy, that we're going to use that as an excuse to go through your private.
Yeah, I'm just saying, right, it is super broad,
I
yeah.
think it would be a great idea to give it back to Mr. Lebu and work with our admin, our high school admin, to address that issue and then the concern that they were trying to address. We're happy to send that language back to you.
Okay, no, I think that's great, and we have the other small edit that might help on the
Great.
as well. So thank you for taking that back and the time on it. That's
So-
all I have for high school.
I just want to touch base on the Otis because I don't think it needs to be changed.
Okay.
And I don't think it needs to be changed because Otis is the grade book. And if you look at the bullet points, like underneath that box where it says the A is a 3 to a 4, right? Down below where it says number 3, the letter grade indicates the following. So an A means the student has completed proficient or advanced work on all course essential standards. So if a student gets a 3 to a 4, that's not a grade point average. That's the scoring in the grade book. So it's no longer on out of 100%, right? It's on out of 4. Isn't that, am I reading that wrong?
And I agree.
I mean, I think you don't want to change those raw scores because that's what those raw scores mean converted to a letter grade, which has been the hardest part about a lot of this, right?
Agree.
But then the grade point, which is in Power School, I think you guys said is where that transcript lives. So then if someone in Otis has an A, their GPA is it'll indicate a 4 if it's not an AP class, right?
I agree.
So it doesn't matter if in the class the student got a 3.6, it's still an A, and that's an A on for their letter grade. So it would come out in their GPA as a 4.
I do think that a student could be confused though here, because on this sheet here, they had a 3.0. This is the 89.5% question here, right?
Yeah.
Is that an A or is that a B plus?
Yeah,
And in this sheet, it says at 3.0, that's an A, right? And so a student thinks, oh, I noticed, I'm good. But the translation would actually end up being a B at that level, probably in the grade book. So I think if we moved it to the 2.99, that it aligns and those two messages are consistent.
I think the reason why I was confused, Mandy, I think the intent, everybody's on the same page of what it's supposed to be, and even your definition, how you just described it, is exactly how everybody's agreeing that the process is working. The fact that they took the time to take 2 different paragraphs, one paragraph to define a course GPA, and then the second to define a raw score, made me question that was their intent, or was it 2 different, especially when the last line says the course GPA will be calculated using the following conversion: A is a 4, B is a 3, C is a 2, D is a 1, and F is a 0.
see, and I would, as a teacher, I would argue that those aren't the same. So the 3 to 4, the raw score, is not the cumulative GPA score.
What would it be?
So like if a kid is, so it says here, like they're proficient, right? So maybe they're proficient at a 3.2. They got it, they can't extend the knowledge to something beyond it, but they're proficient. Well, that's an A. So to me, it wouldn't be the 3.2 going in to Power School and then converting that to a B. It would be the other way around. The 3.2 in Otis says this kid got an A. And then that A in Power School means that kid got a 4 for their GPA, 4 points.
So the GPA, the 4, 3, 2, 1, we've always historically calculated GPAs through that. That's what a grade is equal. The Otis raw
Okay.
score is just to be able to give that light.
I'm tracking.
The raw score
Yes,
is
you.
now what would have been like the overall percentage in the class that the kiddo had. So that raw score is not a GPA, even though it looks
It's not.
like a GPA number.
Yes.
It's like, what's that score that they're getting? Which
Got
is
it.
the hard.
Thank you. And
Everybody
so-
wants to keep numbers in it,
No,
and that's
thank
what
you.
makes it difficult.
That is the difference. So that was my first question. What is the difference between the course GPA and the raw score? And-
One is just a decimal that they look, computer computes, because that's what
Yeah.
they can do.
To give you your grade. And so almost if we even took this,
Sorry, can you guys stop talking out there? If you'll step out if you need to have a conversation, sorry.
know that
Thank you.
that helps me. And that's the difference between the course GPA is after you get the raw to the A, then when it turns around and computes the GPA, it becomes the 3. I almost wanted to do it in sequential order of how it works and flip 2 to 1, but I'm tracking. You don't have to do that for me. I get it. I get it now. And everybody understands the point of where it's going and the outcome for the students, which is all that matters.
I mean, and I do think since Mr. LeBou, you're taking it back for the other piece, I would want to make sure, I mean, I'm definitely not the expert on this, but I just make sure that that's really how it works and talk to your admin and teachers. Yeah,
We will get you an update after we read through and double check some things.
perfect. Thank you.
That's right. That's
So-
all I had on high school and then middle school after that, so I wanted to stop at high school.
Well, and I feel like we're gonna pause on high school. That will come back to us. Or is that not?
We could take this either way. You could approve it with the stipulation that the administration would bring back revised wording in those 2 areas. I'm just thinking timeline, we'd like to be able to share that information with parents and students as they come and not after they're here. So your next board meeting is the night before. I know, it's the night before teachers report.
After registration.
So it's after registration. I don't know, we're kind of at that deadline.
Chairman Simpson, if I
Yes,
may.
yeah.
But I also agree with Allison's question on fine tuning the contagious illness of the vaccine to reflect the new Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. Because I agree that it wasn't changed. It's always been written in that format and to talk about those major childhood diseases that we have vaccines for. Whereas now we have added COVID, and that's where the new chart could be extremely helpful in this scenario, in that the answer could be a little bit different in that there is no vaccine for children in that. So pulling them for that reason under a COVID versus a measles or something, they do seem very different in that. And that's where having the broad language of the will be versus refer to an upcoming additional chart of information, I wouldn't mind seeing.
I worry though that it is law. And it is law that that's why it's been in there, and that law is not changing.
The law isn't, but what has been added to it has. So how do you exclude children from school that haven't been vaccinated from COVID when it's not FDA approved to be vaccinated for COVID?
The 33,512, and we are, but 33,512 has nothing to do with vaccination or not vaccination.
It's the contagious disease coming out.
Right.
Right. And so when
yeah.
they've added, that was where times before we said, okay, let's define a contagious disease. And that really COVID can be added to that definition of contagious disease and definitely complicates things.
So what we could do, because August is one of those times a year where we're finishing our hiring process. It's likely that we'll ask the board to do a special session on that night in order to approve an addendum for HR, just to make sure we can issue contracts in a timely manner for the last few people through. We could add these 3 revisions, or reviews, so contagious disease, help me out,
Grade conversion.
grade conversion,
And search.
and search. And then you could take action and approve that handbook that evening. Does that feel?
And you're talking about the August work session.
I'm talking about
correctly?
August works,
Yeah.
because I do think the 16th is too late in order to work with parents and students and expecting them to understand those expectations.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I'm thinking printing, right? Like, I'm sure handbooks we don't print anymore. Online,
But it-
okay.
It's translation.
So
It's the
then
translation, yeah.
it is the translation, okay. So if we did change something in September as well, it then gets updated. Okay, thank you. That was just part of my question.
Superintendent? Or Stephen, could you talk about, so parents encounter this electronically when they update their information, and they're asked to say that I got a copy of it, yes or no? And if they say no or skip,
No one ever says no about
is that a barrier to their student attending school?
So typically that's a requirement that we ask of, but to my knowledge, we've not ever excluded someone for failing to do that. We ask something similar at the elementary level.
They don't sign the computer use policies and they don't get to use computers,
Right.
but the rest of it.
It's information and yes, we would desire that parents would read this document. I don't know how many do, but it's a useful tool when challenges or problems come up.
And a lack of a signature doesn't negate that they are the school's rules.
No.
So we're going to work toward a special session with 3 paragraphs or 3, something coming back to you.
Okay, perfect. What high school? Middle school.
Middle school. Yeah, okay, my eyes just went right to the red and blue. I'll just say that right up front. Page 7, grade level promotion policy. Progressing to the next grade level is earned through academic achievement. All middle school students must meet the following criteria to advance to the next grade. And then everything was deleted. So we removed all the criteria to advance to the next grade. And I just paused right about there and went, oh, now what?
So our criteria for retention is largely driven by parents. It's really a parent's decision on whether or not a child is retained. So parents are brought into that conversation. So it's not, the school can make a recommendation, and we often do make a recommendation, whether or not we believe a child should be retained or not. Ultimately, that decision rests with the parent.
Okay.
But you would like us to either state that or to be clear at what those things are. Is that what I mean?
Yeah, because then we continue on with students who do not meet the academic achievement may be promoted through an alternate method. And then we go through and really start spelling out an alternate route. And so it wasn't clear to me.
Seems like that in trying to clean it, that second sentence could be deleted and not change the meaning of it.
Yeah, maybe we don't have an alternate route anymore. Maybe we have a different conversation. But I guess I still, and then we're middle school. And it used to say, right, must pass 80% of your classes or not fail the same 4 consecutive quarters. Is that a state thing where it's always up to the parents, or is it really incumbent upon us as a board to set some minimum standards?
So Trustee Ross, I can probably speak more to my elementary experience, having lived there more recently and being less certain about the high school level and middle school in particular. But what the research on retention, even for older children, is pretty dismal in terms of it being whether or not it's beneficial. And it really takes parent and student buy-in for it to be successful. I think it's an evolution in our practice. It doesn't mean that we're lowering our expectations or that we have less requirements, but I think it's recognizing and involving the parent in that decision. Perhaps language should reflect the parent's role in retention.
And I saw that in other parts of the handbook, right? About if these things are happening, we'll bring in the parents and start to have a plan and a conversation and a discussion and some intervention on that. It struck out to me, again, I went to red and blue, and then I kind of went to the elementary and high, and I didn't see something similar. So I really just wanted to bring it up and talk about it.
The old rules used to reflect a state board rule when they did middle school reform and the idea that kids are going to pass, and did that get repealed?
Yeah, that requirement is not. How it says.
And so we don't want to hang on to it.
Well, under your tutelage.
It's interesting hearing Representative Kirby, and his conversation of student achievement and looking at that and having a goal, and then the accountability and the constant conversation, and then coming to this, and we kind of removed all of that criteria. I don't think we removed the will or the goal by any means, but we did remove it out of the book here, so.
It was, I guess to speak to that too, what was written was not good practice, whether it was there or not, it was not good practice. And my knowledge has not been pursued.
So to clarify, are you interested in keeping language that would say, here are some ways that we know you're prepared to be successful at the next grade level, or are you saying, let's remove that? I'm not certain what you're saying.
Basically, I forgot the difference between a discussion and out of our workshop, right? And I noticed something that made me pause and then say, we should talk about this and address this and talk, what is the intent? What do we want it to be? For our board and our district that says, we want to have criteria, we want to see kids succeed, and we don't want to remove all barriers and just push them through the system.
So then I would suggest that Mr. Wabu work with our middle school principals to clarify the intent and the philosophy and bring that back also for you.
That would be lovely.
Happy to do that.
Is that the will of the rest of the board and trustees? As I brought that up, that conversation, I don't think it's a one-sided thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can go either way because I know the intent, I know the research on
benchmarks,
yeah.
but I do think Trustee Westfall is correct that language lived because of a state board mandate that probably was issued in 2006 or 7 and no longer exists.
And I think there was some great language in some of the other handbooks and things that probably really well described the intent of what we would like to do and intervene with parents.
Karen, we're ready for 3F.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next one is our ISBA resolutions, and I just want to remind you guys the ones that ISBA adopted are there for 2 years, which there were several that we were in support of. Are you guys thinking anything else we want to address or bring up or?
So the really good news is that 2 of your resolutions were actually resolved eventually through the legislative process. So that's really encouraging. And then there's still quite a lot of support for full day kindergarten. So we're the lead on trying to advocate for that. And then the conversation about minimum wage connects to classified employees and the reimbursement there. And that's a really significant topic. If there are additional things that you would like to pursue, we'd be happy to research that for you. The deadline is the end of this month, the 30th or 31st, the 30th.
I thought it was there.
So that's for resolutions. We can certainly wait and join other resolutions.
What is the timeline on that?
For the joining the other resolutions,
It's afterwards, it's not at the same, it's not simultaneous.
right.
Okay.
The one I'd like us to have the flexibility to have a different supplemental levy structure, which we've done in the past, I think. And I can't remember if that particular one expired, but it was my option.
I thought maybe it did.
I don't know if other trustees are there. It'd be really nice not to.
Yeah.
When you say structure, you're thinking about its length, with last 4 years instead of 2 years, or whatever the board feels is appropriate.
Yeah.
Are there other pieces of that that you're thinking of a structure?
I think there was some support in the past for making the terms longer. And, just listening to Representative tonight, that may be the one that would have the most potential. So I don't think, reversing previous decisions will ever happen, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think another previous conversation that was had was on impact fees
Yeah.
for schools to be able to benefit from impact fees, especially with the growth and the projection. I think that might ring true with other folks as well.
Trustee Westfall, did CUNA carry that, and did ISBA pick it up? I can't remember.
They did, but didn't go anywhere
They
last
didn't
session. So.
So
So
it
it
could
might
be a
be a
recycle.
recurring one,
Again,
yeah.
okay.
Can't remember, yeah.
I don't
Because
know.
it was last year, right, that it got, yeah, so I think it has one more year,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other hot ticket? I'm not hearing the buzz of other different items. Everything's been the ESSER right now and
And I mean, of course, the 2 that are still,
still there.
that we already wanted. I don't want to see that go away, but
I do think one of the things that we've been trying to advocate for in that conversation to restructure property tax, which we agree that all needs, I think we agree that all needs to be restructured, is to really have a seat at the table so that we understand the impact. And I do think that they'll continue to talk about that. They pushed through one that kind of went through, but maybe the resolution would really be a broad stakeholder group that would represent, our homeowners and the gamut of homeowners, those that are
right,
down, with our tax breaker and circuit breaker. So we could consider something like that.
Yeah.
If we do any of these, we'd have to structure it and bring it back for you to meet before the 30th in order to approve it, so we can submit.
Yeah.
And we're happy to do the research and the legwork and present you some ideas.
and could that be something that could be like emailed? Yeah, I'm not quite sure, I'm trying to figure out like how to, yeah,
I mean, we put together a packet, right? So
Yeah.
that you see it and be able to think about it beforehand.
yeah. Okay. Next one is our monthly budget status report.
Julie is here to answer your questions. If you have any.
Any questions?
What's the latest and greatest?
We're coming in about the projections that we thought we would be at the end of the year. I'm currently working on figuring out where we are and carry forward where we are to pull down the rest of the ESSER one funds at the end of this year. And now we're mostly also looking at going forward and getting all the other grant stuff going and all that. We do start our actual audit here in a couple of weeks, so that will speed up the process and a number of things that we're doing as well. So it's a busy time for us.
Mr. Dewey, will you kind of explain, I think ESSER one only shows 28% expended, but ESSER two shows 100% expended. Will you help
Yes.
us understand that?
Yeah, so on the reports that you actually see, I'm gonna go back. So in ESSER one, we are using that to backfill for the governor's 5% holdback in our discretionary. So one of the things we wanted to make sure we had and finalize what our discretionary was going to be after our July 15th payment. So that's why we haven't pulled that down yet. We will pull down the rest of those funds probably in the next couple weeks, in a week or so. ESSER two, basically what that was, the entire plan ESSER two is to actually use those funds starting in this fiscal year that we're currently in, and not in last fiscal year. So you guys know there was about 2.6 million that you guys authorized in the budget to be able to spend this year that we're currently in. Unfortunately, construction doesn't follow our fiscal year. And in order to get the construction done, we had to start the Nampa High projects and the Skyview projects and then two other elementary HVAC projects in June. Well, that meant there was a June's worth of work that actually happened for ESSER two. We can't pull down ESSER two at all until we actually finish ESSER one spending. But it did happen in the last fiscal year. So we actually have to put those costs in those, but it's the same ESSER money.
So it's not the full amount of ESSER two?
It's not it's the
just a
ESSER.
small amount
Yeah, ESSER
that has
two is.
been expended at 100%.
Yeah, so ESSER two is $11.9 million and it's actually grown since then because we've had a couple more bills come in and that. So it's just a matter of all those accruals that come in and we get a bill this month for close to last month. We're getting all those bills now to make sure that we get all those in the proper year for accounting purposes.
We just wanted to make sure that you understood those two line items and why they said what they said.
And just one more item as well. We have spent the COVID relief funds from the governor. One's K4 and the other one's K12. We're starting to spend some of that money now. Majority of what we spent so far is summer school. So we're using that and we're trying to get all those costs, and we have requested some of those funds already from the summer school to happen prior to the fiscal year end. Most of that's salaries and stuff like that. So we will have quite a bit left in this year for the remaining of the summer school for the July summer school portion, and then whatever we decide to do for all the K4. I believe there's quite a bit of spending that we're planning on doing because we have to have all that spent. We have like what in total $1.1 million of K4 and an additional 266 or 263,000 and then K12 monies that we got in total for those allocations. So we will try to have all those spent by the December 30 deadline with the governor. And remember, those were not budgeted because we could not budget them in advance. So when we spend those, we'll come back to you with the plan.
Yes.
So in all the times, I have never seen any item go to
147.8% budget to actual.
Which one's that one?
It is driver's ed.
Yeah.
Because you've always done amazing. I've never seen that before. So
So,
what happened with driver's ed? Do we have a whole bunch of new drivers on the road this
so
summer? I should
there's
be
two things
careful.
that's happened in driver's ed. So we normally budget around 55,000, because driver eds have been that way. This year, one of the things we did, and I think my daughter was one of the first, we opened up driver's ed to be able to use the fast forward funds. And because of that, driver's ed is normally $250, and the fast forward funds pays up to $225 of that. And it seems like that has created a boom in our use. Peter would know more than that, but it seems like now every class is full and then some. So people have really figured it out. So now driver's ed only costs them $25 instead of $225. So they're really filling up every class, which is great for our contractor, and they seem to be loving that. I think so it has created quite a bit more work for us. And then one of the things is we front that money until we pay them the entire thing is another part of it. And then we have to pay some of that money. We get that money back from the state through the fast forward funds.
I'm actually glad to hear that. That probably fills a really big hole for a lot of people. So.
Well, it's a great way to, I think you think about how much more, to me, we're normally in the $50,000 range. And I think right now we're like 80 something. So it's almost double. And you think about what we had to do in COVID in the beginning of the year when it wasn't as full. So, I mean, it's quite a bit more usage. And
For those families that are using it, if they don't have this opportunity, those kids are waiting even longer to be able to drive because then they just go take the test. And so the options that it provides those families is that I appreciate you guys looking into that and being so spots like that.
Yeah, Peter really helped me
Well
get
done.
that going because I was
Nice
cheap and
job.
I wanted my daughter to use it.
That's awesome. I'm glad.
Randy, you mentioned the last payment of this unusual school year showed up this week or last week.
Yes.
Were there any surprises? Is it what you were expecting?
So we had estimated, we'd estimated a little less on our best 28 weeks. It came in a couple of units higher than that, which was helpful. Unfortunately, that's our best 28 weeks at $22,000. So it wasn't like this big, massive amount of money coming our way. But it was better than what we had projected, so that's nice. And so we received about a $1.7 million payment, but that had a number of different levels into it. And so what ended up running the general fund was about 1.5. And so, and then with the remainder of the ESSER 1 funds, that will bring us whole, that will allow us to go forward without having seen a loss this year is the plan.
Was that also the payment for the advanced runs, or was that earlier in May?
So the way the state does that is, they have the 5 payments, and so it's just they kind of estimate throughout the year. So when they made that change, they made all those changes in our payments, so we got a little bit in the last payment and a little bit in the next payment. So it's just a total overall. That was our actual final payment for the year, and so we should not be getting anything more from them other than advanced ops, which doesn't come that way. It comes in a different way.
And that payment's not reflected in these reports.
Correct.
Because it
Right.
came in on July 15th.
Yeah, so it's cash basis. So the reports we give you are cash basis.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Let's see. Right? You two, right?
Yeah.
1630, 16.
Yeah, 2 policies, 1 line item.
Yeah.
Both of these are up for a second and final read, and you can see the red line, the changes that the trustees suggested previously.
Yep.
Trustee Westphal, are you ready for a motion?
I am.
I move that we accept policy 1630 and 1640 for a second and final.
Second. Perfect. It was moved by trustee Ross, seconded by trustee Westfall. Any more discussion?
I see the red lines.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay.
Mr. Walter is here for our legal updates.
These, I will be short and sweet. We have one case that is currently in litigation in federal court. This is public knowledge. I'm going to keep it general. I'm not going to attorney-client information, but what's public knowledge I'll discuss. It's in federal court. It's a disability discrimination claim with retaliation because the individual involved was not renewed. We are currently in the what's called discovery stage. The complaint has been filed, has been answered, defenses have been raised, and now we are exchanging written discovery. We ask them questions about what information do you have to support your claims, and you got to give us your persons and your information documents, and vice versa. And so that's a process that takes a bit of time because, of course, there's people hold things back, and we got to ask for it. And there's a judge involved, but we're in that process. At the end of that process of written discovery, we go into depositions. We have question and answer sessions under oath of parties involved and some witnesses. And after that, then we go into motion practice. This whole process right now will probably take us through to midwinter right now. Nothing, we've received about 2,100 pages of documents. I've reviewed about 1,600 pages of them. Nothing's alarming. Nothing's concerning. It's progressing as expected in federal court, which is slow and steady. So.
And will you remind us the process that it had to go through in order to?
Yes, this was previously originally filed with the Idaho Human Rights Commission and EEOC, alleging the same claims of discrimination based on gender and disability. And interestingly, the claims were brought, we responded, and then they sat there for a bit of time. And then the claimant requested a voluntary dismissal, which is something they can do. And what that does is it takes it out of the agency jurisdiction. They get what's called a right to sue letter. And at that point, with the right to sue letter, they can then file a lawsuit in federal court. And that's what they did here. We're in that process. So no finding was made. I like to get those because it typically discourages them if there's no finding of discrimination. But they didn't. And so here we are in federal court. Any questions? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have our trustee comments. Oh, I skipped. Sorry, Paula. I apologize. Superintendent comments.
All right, so we talked a little bit about what we wanted to point out in the budget reports. I also wanted to make sure that you knew that we were working on the budget explanation document. Mr. Dewey and Mrs. Tuck and Clerk Wallen and several of us are putting together with the hope that with some narrative and some information that this really complex world of public school budgeting could be made accessible. And so we're close to some final editing, and then we'll have some parents and some community members read it and see what is still confusing, and then we'll make another round of edits. So remember last year we did our first round in trying to produce this document and make it available. So this is our second year in a row. Did want to thank the trustees for allowing me to be away for a while and excusing me from attendance at the board meeting. It had been a long while since I was able to take any of my personal or vacation time. So really grateful for that time and grateful to our staff who covered and made things run really well. We are planning our district leader retreat August 1st and 2nd. We'll be off-site. We're excited with some plans, a little bit of fun, a bit of work, and just starting the year off. It's several themes running around in our mind. One of them might be better together and working together and supporting each other. Did want to thank Kathleen and Joni for their work at our board workshop on norms. I'm really grateful to have folks who want to invest in the district. Wanted to give you an update on the digital files, so our personnel files that are digitizing. We just had this little van who comes, it's mobile, it's right there. We're progressing really nicely. through it, and our team had been trained on the new software, and so those that are already digitalized were able to begin to access those. Mr. Jers, I think I heard we might have that van in our parking lot till October-ish?
Yeah, it's about a 90 days worth of scanning. There's quite a few records.
For a while. We have a lot of files. And those are the things I wanted to give you an update.
Hey, trustee comments. I'll go ahead and start with trustee Westfall this time.
I thank you for your comments, and I was also kind of looking, the CIP discussion that Legislative Kirby brought up. So is that coming up in the next few sessions that we can kind of have some work on it? And he brought up some things that I thought were interesting on that. And the other one was, this year specifically out of most, and with the funding, we've talked a lot more about summer school and learning gaps. And maybe at some point before fall, just a little bit of a quick conversation update on our summer school and how it's been and how many kids we've got and that kind of thing. I would love to see and hear from a little bit. Maybe we need to get some of the kids in here.
And that's coming as well.
Is that coming too?
Yeah.
You guys are all on it.
Well, we've tentatively stated it for September because we need those programs to end so that we can collect the information in time to produce it. So it's tentatively scheduled for the work session in September, I think.
I love it.
Yeah, because when, I can't remember the end date, it's the 30th, yeah, so it's here quick.
And then we walk right into teachers back on campus. We just need a little bit of time to pull it together.
Nothing for me, thanks. I did do the board self-assessment for us, and I think I want to bring up possibly a different type of rubric. I feel like it doesn't quite get at helping us to get better. I mean, it's a rubric, and I feel like a lot of times based on what we're being asked, we're satisfactory as an overall rating, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think we all know that as humans, there are always things for us to work on. So I just know, I don't know when, but moving forward, I kind of want to look at different rubrics and hopefully try to find one that's maybe tailored to our goals as a board that may help us to look at and dig into, are we improving and doing things? I did for the agenda was well designed, and I'm going to take the fault as board chair on that, but especially the ISBA resolutions and handbooks, where we're now going to possibly, have to push it and add another, I mean, we are having a meeting that night, but because we're going to have to have a special session to vote, just thinking that needed to be sooner for the time frame, and that I own that part. So we're going to work to improve on that. Upcoming meetings. We have our board work session August 4th at ends at 6:30. And then we'll have.
And that is a Tuesday night.
That is a Tuesday night.
Or Wednesday night.
A Wednesday.
Night? It's a Wednesday night.
Yes, because of the retreat. Thank you. I'm like, I had it in my head.
Different nights.
It's a totally different night. Wednesday night, August 4th.
Different night.
Yeah. Okay.
The work session.
And then special session will be added once you guys have this stuff, to approve those things from tonight. And then our regular meeting, August 16th, which is a Monday, correct? At 6:30. I think that's it. We are adjourned. Thank you.